We shall be continuing with our discussion on JavaScript. Now, if you recall, in our last two classes, we had talked about the basic object oriented features of the language JavaScript, how a JavaScript program executes on the browser in the internet environment, and we shall also looked into a number of examples where we saw how we can use JavaScript to provide a number of pretty useful features which can make a web page interactive or more attractive in general. So, today we shall be starting our discussion on something called cookies, how we can use cookies along with JavaScript. So, the first thing is to define a cookie. What is a cookie? Now, a cookie by definition is a small amount of named data stored by the web browser and is associated with a particular web page or website. So, here there are a few things you need to understand. Number one, a cookie is supposed to be something which is regarded as a named data, a data with an assigned name to it, and it is also associated with some web page. Actually, the concept is like this. Suppose we have a particular web page. This web page has been downloaded from site and is being displayed on your browser. Now, what I am saying is that along with this web page, you define such named data called cookies. These cookies also get downloaded onto your so called web client or the browser. If this is the browser, then along with the web client, along with the web page, cookies also get downloaded and stored on the browser. Now, these cookies can serve the purpose of maintaining sessions, conveying some useful information across pages and so on. We shall see some of the typical usages of cookies later, but first let us try to understand how such name value pairs can be stored on the browser machine, on the machine which is running the browser, and how the values can be accessed. So, continuing with the definition, a cookie basically serves to give or provide the web browser the capability to memorize something. Here, since we are saying that cookies are some data which we are storing in the browser itself, which this means that the browser can use these cookies for the purpose of memorizing something, right. Some of the typical things that web browsers may like to memorize may be some user preferences which some websites do use. Like some websites try to maintain the usage profile of a particular user, and depending on the profile, certain choices or selections or certain popular options that are often exercised by the users are considered by default. This means that you can have a customized menu or a customized page depending on your choices or the options you have exercised in the recent past. Cookies can help you to do that. And the second thing is that some server side scripts like the CGI scripts have the capability to read and write the cookie values stored on the client. So, cookies are something which are stored on the client machine, but some server side scripts can have access to those cookies and can read the values of the cookies. Now, in JavaScript, we can manipulate cookies in a fairly simple way. We use the document object for the purpose. Document object, as we shall see later, the different properties that are associated with this. Cookie is one of the property. in the document object, which if you recall, it actually signifies the document that is presently being displayed in the selected window. Cookie is a property which in fact stores or contains the values of these named data that we are storing on the browser machine. Now, the cookie property is basically a string. This property is nothing but a string which can allow a JavaScript code to read, write, modify and delete the so called cookies associated with the current web page. Now, a cookie has a number of properties. A cookie will be having a name and a value. Some typical cookie may be, say I have downloaded a page, I want to store who is the author of the page. That I can store as the name of the page, that is the name of the cookie, and the actual name of the author, which is the value of the cookie. So, as the name value pair, I can store some information about the page, for example. So, in addition to the name and the value, a cookie can have several other attributes, like we can specify how long a cookie would be valid. We can specify the cookie's lifetime, whether it is valid only throughout the session. When I am logging out from the page, will the cookie be destroyed, or will it remain across sessions? It also mentions a path. Path will tell that which web pages will have this particular cookie associated with them. And thirdly, there is a property called secure. This is a Boolean value. This can have the value either true or false. If it is true, if set, then cookies are transmitted using secure HTTPS, for example. See, the idea here is like this. In many cases, the information that is stored in the cookie can be pretty confidential. It can be as confidential as the username and password. It can also be, for instance, your credit card number. Some website, if it chooses to design the pages in that way, they can store this kind of information in the form of cookies. But these cookies you can set or mark as secure, so that whenever the server side script asks for the value of these cookies and these cookies need to be transferred back to the server, they will be transferred in an encrypted form, and this encrypted form of transfer is guaranteed by having the so called secure HTTP links, HTTPS. Now, let us see how we can store cookies on the browser. To associate a cookie with the current document, as I said, we must use the cookie property of the document object. Now, the cookie value is specified as a string of this form, name equal to value. An example is shown here. For the present document, document.cookie equal to, I can write first a string. This is the name I am giving to the cookie, mod_date equal to, this is the string, concatenated with a function escape which contains document.lastModified. Here actually I am trying to store a cookie which will store the modification date of the document in a cookie whose name is mod_date. Okay. Now, the actual last modified value of the document can be retrieved from the last modified attribute of the document, and the purpose of this escape function is to remove all spaces and special characters from this last modified string, because one thing is to be remembered, that a cookie value cannot include any punctuation symbols or white spaces. Okay. So, if there are white spaces or any kind of punctuation symbols, they have to be converted into their equivalent hexadecimal values using escape sequences. The escape function does exactly that, right. Now, after you have stored the cookie, you can retrieve the cookies in a similar way by accessing the cookie property. Now, whenever you access the cookie property of the document, what you will be getting is a string which will contain all the cookies that apply to the current document, a list of name value pairs separated by semicolon. So, actually what we mean here is that whenever you access the cookies property, you get something like this. Suppose you access document dot cookies cookie. Actually what you get is this, you will be getting a string which will consist of name value pairs, name equal to value semicolon, some other name equal to some other value semicolon, some other name equal to some other value. In this way it will continue. So, this string will contain all the cookies, they will be delimited by this semicolon, and in the cookies the name of the cookie will be first, then an equal to sign, then the value of the cookie. So, this document.cookie will return this entire character string, the whole cookie list which is delimited by semicolons. Okay. Now, let us see how we can access or determine the value of a particular cookie. Now, we shall see an example. Now, we shall be using the index of and the split function that are available on string objects. JavaScript supports a number of methods on string objects. We shall be using index of and split. See, index of is basically a function or a method which searches for a particular substring within a string and returns the starting point of that substring in the string. And similarly split can break up a string into individual substring, an array of substrings. Okay, we shall see this. Now, the example is like this. First, we are retrieving this document.cookie. Okay. So, here as I said, all the cookies delimited by semicolon in the form of a long character string is returned. It is returned into a variable called all cookies. Next, we are invoking this all cookies is a string, right? We are invoking the index of method, and we are searching for the string mod underscore date equal to, because this is the name of the cookie we had given and this is the string we are searching for in the cookie. So, somewhere we would be getting this particular string and that index is returned by this function. So, we are storing it in the variable index. Now, since from the beginning we have to skip 8 places to reach the end from where the value will start, we add 8 to this index to indicate from where the cookie will start, actually the value of the cookie will start. And to mark the end of the cookie value, we are again using an index of function method with a second optional parameter which tells you that from which position to start the search, and we are looking for the semicolon. So, from this mod date portion we are trying to look for the next semicolon between which the actual value of the cookie would be present. But however, if the cookie is the last cookie in the list, the semicolon will not be there. Okay. So, the second index of function would be returning false, it will be returning a value of -1. So, if the value of end returned is -1, which means that this particular cookie is the last cookie. So, then you assign the length of the cookie to end, that means the last index, and the value of the cookie is returned by using the function substring from begin to end. This entire substring will be the value of the substring, and the value you can use unescape to convert all those special character escape sequences to their original white spaces and punctuation symbols. You get the original value of the cookie. Now, for instance, you can use this modification date cookie to check whether the value we have got from the cookie is the same as the modification date of the document or not. If you find that they are not the same, then you can raise an alert that the document has been modified since the last visit. So, the last time you had visited, the document was something else. So, in this way you can actually utilize cookies to store some information about a document, which you can check, access and check sometimes later when you visit that same page again. So, cookies can be used for this kind of applications. Now, let us see Java and JavaScript, how they can work together. There are two things. We had talked about JavaScript, how JavaScript code can be embedded inside an HTML file which can be downloaded and executed on the browser. Now, we shall see later Java programs as applets can also be included within web pages, and the downloaded compiled Java code bytecode form can be also interpreted and executed on the browser itself. Okay. Now, some applications may demand that from Java you should be able to call some functionalities of JavaScript and vice versa. Let us see how these can be done. So, first you see how Java can be invoked along with JavaScript. So, calling Java utilities means the methods and the properties from JavaScript. The basic concept is this: from a JavaScript program we can read or write the public fields or call the public methods. If they are not public, we would not be able to do this. Okay. So, just to repeat again, in the object oriented paradigm, inside an object there can be methods, there can be some properties or variables which may be either public, which may be private. If they are private, they can be accessed only from within the object. If they are public, they can be accessed from outside. Now, here in this context we say that only the properties and methods of a Java object, Java program which indicates an object, can be accessed which are public in nature. This is quite natural, and an applet in Java is created by using an applet tag in HTML. The applet tag contains a name attribute which specifies the name of an applet. So, actually when we specify a Java program inside an HTML document, we write like this: applet name equal to, we can give some name to the applet, xyz dot class. Then we can have an end applet. There are other attributes also, we shall see them later, but this is the basic thing. So, we can identify an applet by a name. Okay. So, there are two things. Of course, the example I have shown just now is incomplete. We have to specify two things. We have to specify the name of the applet. We have also to specify the file, applet file, which has to be downloaded. Now, here I have specified the name as dot class, but actually dot class typically indicates the name of the source file. So, these details we shall see later, the exact syntax, when we talk about Java applets, how they can be included in web pages and so on. This we shall see in our next lecture, but for the time being, what is important to remember is that whenever you are including an applet within an HTML code, the applet can be assigned a name using the name attribute of the applet tag. Okay. For example, if I give a name of my applet, name equal to my applet, then from JavaScript I can access this applet object as document dot my applet, as if this my applet object appears as part of the document object. All right. Now, once we access the applet like this, all public fields and methods can be accessed subsequently, just like as if there were properties and method of the JavaScript object. Just some examples. Suppose within the applet x underscore size was a public variable, I can set that variable to 150 like this. Redraw, if it is a method, I can invoke the method. I can invoke a method drawLine with some parameter values which I can pass like this 10, 10, 80, 100. So, in this way any method, any attribute which are there pertaining to the applet, it can be invoked from within the JavaScript code. Now, if we look at the reverse, calling JavaScript code from Java programs, this is not so straightforward as the other case we had just seen. This is usually accomplished through some non-standard class. Netscape.javascript.jso object is one such class which is slightly non-standard and not portable across different platforms. Now, this particular class represents a JavaScript object within a Java program. As I had said, this feature will not be supported on all browsers, and even if they are supported, some features may be supported, some features may be not. So, it is not very much recommended to use this feature when you are developing some web pages or applications. Now, a small example to illustrate how we can invoke JavaScript functionalities. This is a small Java program snippet, Java applet in fact. Here you will have to import netscape.javascript.star to include all the relevant classes. In this function, I am defining an object called win, which is being obtained from the get window method of the current window. This means current. So, the current window is treated as an object and is returned in win, and I can invoke a method called eval on this object. Within quotes in the parameter, we have actually specified a JavaScript code. So, when this is executed, the alert statement of JavaScript is executed, and we get an alert box displayed on the screen. So, in this way, this is just a simple example to show you. In this way, you can see how we can call some simple JavaScript utilities from Java. Next, we shall have a quick look at the common JavaScript objects that are available for use. Now, we have seen or looked at a number of JavaScript examples. We had actually used a number of such objects in those examples, starting from window, document, history, and so on. Now, we shall try to systematically look at the different object types and the different attributes and methods which are available to be used along with those objects in JavaScript. So, the first object that we look at is the window object. This is the most basic kind of object, and the primary task of a web browser, as I said, is to display HTML documents in a window. So, actually when you display an HTML document in a window, there are two things: what is being displayed, and number two, where it is being displayed. Now, what is being displayed is the present document, and where it is being displayed, it can be the single window, or if there are frames, you can specify in which frame you are displaying the document. So, there are two things you need to specify when you are talking about a document being displayed. Number one, what is being displayed, that is the document. Number two, where it is displayed, that is in which window. Okay. Document and window are two related objects we require in this case. So, as I have just said, the document object will represent the HTML document, whereas the window object will represent the window or the frame where the document is actually being displayed. Now, this diagram shows the object hierarchy of window. Here what we are trying to say is that from the window object, what are the sub objects which are inherited from window, which means under window what are the other objects that are included by default. Now, in JavaScript, this diagram shows almost all the objects which are included under Windows. Self, parent, top, these are actually self-referential structures, because self, parent and top are also of window type. Now, within the current window, if you say window dot self, it means the same window. If you mention window dot top, which means it will represent the top level window under which the present window is embedded. If you mention window dot parent, it will refer to the window from where directly this window under question is included. So, the parent window. So, top, parent and self, all these three are self-referential object, you can say. They all refer to some other window object. Now, in addition to this, there is the navigator object whose usages we had seen earlier in order to get the versions of the browsers. Frames. If a window has several frames, you will get an array of frame objects. The idea is like this. Suppose you have a window being displayed on the screen, and this window consists of several frames. This is frame 1, this is frame 2, this is the third frame, this is the fourth frame. Now, this frames objects subcategory, this will actually refer to an array of frames which are referenced by frame 0, frame 1, frame 2 and frame 3. Okay. Frame 0 will contain this particular frame, frame 1 will contain this particular frame, frame 2 will be this and frame 3 will be this. Now, in the truest sense, each individual element of the frame array is also a window. So, actually this frame array whatever we are talking about, this is actually an array of windows which are actually frames embedded inside a bigger window, right. So, we can have this frames array object inside the window. Location we shall see later, we have seen some typical usages. We can specify the URL of the document being displayed in the present window using location. History, this also we have seen. Document, in fact document is one object which is included in a window, but under document again there are other objects, we shall see this later. And in the window there is something called screen object again. Screen actually specifies some display properties like color, font sizes, etc. These are properties of screens, we shall see these. First, let us look at some of the important properties of the window object. Now, when you are using a window object, you can use any of these properties in any suitable way you want. Closed is a property, a Boolean value, which indicates if a window is presently open or closed. If it is true, it means the window is closed presently. Status is a property which contains a character string this character string is one which is displayed on the status bar of the window on top. Whatever is displayed there, that is contained in the status property as a string. Document, you already know, this represents the document that is being displayed inside the window. History, this also you have seen, represents the user's browsing history. So, the list of the URLs as has been visited by the user in the axis of time. Location, we have also seen, this is the URL which represents the URL of the document that is presently being displayed. If you change the location attribute value, the document automatically gets changed. So, in this way we had implemented redirection of pages also. Let us see this. And window can have a name. Frames are an array of window objects. As I said, this represents the frames present within the window. Parent is also a window or a frame which contains the present window. And some of the methods which you can use along with the window, many of them you have already used them, seen them in examples, like alert, prompt, confirm. These are the methods which you can use only in the context of a window object. So, if it is alert, so a window will be popped up with respect to the present window. Okay. So, these are different ways of basically displaying dialog boxes with user confirmation, user options, etc. Close, you can use to close a window. Open, also you have seen how to use it. You can open a window, a new window with desired properties, like you recall the size, whether you want a scroll bar or not, whether you want the window to be resized or not, etc. So, you can just open a new window. You can also specify the URL, what is to be displayed in that window. And lastly, there is a method called print. This is a useful utility which you can invoke to print the contents of a window. In many pages you often find that there is an option or a button that says print the contents of this window. It is actually a JavaScript utility which calls this print method of the window object. If the print method is invoked, the contents of the window gets printed. There are some other functions or methods. Move by or move to, these are used to move a window from one location to the next. Move by specifies the offset with respect to the present location, what is the x offset and y offset of the new position. But in move to, we specify the absolute xy coordinate. Similarly, when you want to resize a window, we can invoke these functions. Resize by, here we specify a ratio 0.5, 0.8, 1.5. Resize to will actually specify the xy dimension of the new window. Similarly, when you want to scroll up, down or right, left, we can specify the percentage of scroll or the actual number of lines to scroll. Set interval, clear interval, these are methods which can be used to schedule or cancel some function to be invoked repeatedly within a specified delay. You just remember, this set interval function or method can be used to schedule a particular method to be called repeatedly after some given delays. So, whenever we need this kind of repetitive behavior, a function being called repeatedly after some delay, you should call this set interval function. But if you want to call a method or a function only once after a specified delay, you would rather use set timeout. Okay? And once you give clear interval or clear timeout, this initial setting is cleared. In both cases, the delay is specified in milliseconds. Now let us look at the navigator object. In the examples earlier, we had seen that the purpose of the navigator object basically is to enable a JavaScript program to gain access about some of the details about the browser. So, here in the navigator object, which I had said is an object under window. So, you access it as window.navigator. This basically contains information about the web browser. There are three main properties you use here. Two of them you have already seen in the previous example. App name, this specifies the name of the web browser, Netscape or Internet Explorer, this kind of names you will get here. App version, here you will get the version number from the browser. We had seen in that example that in addition to the simple version number, you get a lot of other information like your hardware platform, etc. And if you simply call the platform attribute, invoke this, or if you access this, you will get the name of the hardware platform on which the browser is running. That means whether it is an Intel machine, it is a Pentium machine, or it is a Sun Solaris platform or HP Unix, means you will get the details of the platform on which your browser is running. So, all these properties you can use with the Windows Navigator object to get some information about the browser. And as I said, some of the properties of the navigator object are more complex than what is required. For example, I have seen that in the applet in the application version app version property, you get a lot more information than required. Typically, we need only the first digit to get the version number 3, 4 or 5 of the particular browser you are using. That is often considered to be enough, but the string actually what it returns is a very long string. So, you can use the substring function to extract the first digit of the string and use it in whatever way you want. Next, let us come to the screen object. Screen object, as I mentioned, this refers to the area where the document is displayed on the window. So, you just try to understand the difference between a window and a screen. You see, this is a window object. In the window object, there are so many things. There can be a title bar on the top, there can be some menus on the top, there can be a status bar on the bottom. So, effectively, this will be the area where your document will be displayed. So, this area can be considered as your screen, right. So, let us see what are the properties of the screen attribute or object you need to specify. So, the window screen object will provide you information about the size of the display and also some of its capabilities like the number of colors you can use on it. Main properties are width and height, which will specify the size of the display. Here the unit of width and height are in pixels. It also gives avail width, avail height, which are the available width and height where the area that is occupied by menus, taskbar, etc., they are excluded from the size. That means, from the total width and height, you take out the areas or the portions which are taken up by the default window taskbars. The remaining portion, that is your available width and available height. So, in an application, you can have access to your available width and available height in order to know how you can best display, or you can configure the display in a suitable way depending on the available space, right. And the last attribute is something called color depth. Now, in color depth, here basically this is a way of specifying that how many colors you can support. It typically specifies the base 2 logarithm of the number of colors that can be displayed, which means if your display supports 256 colors, the value will be 8 log 256 to the base 2. But in general, the value can be less than the log 2 of the maximum number of colors, because some colors may not be actually usable depending on the palettes you are using. But in general, you can use it to actually indicate how many colors are available to you. Next, let us come to the location object. Now, as I said, the location object actually is something using which you can specify the URL of the document which is displayed in the window. So, here the idea is again like this: you have the window, this is your window, and whatever is being displayed in the window, this has come from somewhere else. This is a web server. So, the location object actually talks about the URL from where this document has come. Okay? This is the significance of the location object associated with a document or a window. So, the window.location object will represent the URL of the document which you can see presently displayed in the window. There are several properties here again. The first property, which includes a number of things, is the href. Href is actually a string which consists of the complete URL. Like href can contain within quotes http://www.iitkgp.ernet.in. This kind of a complete URL you can specify, and this value will be available against the href attribute of location object. But the different components of the URL you can also access separately by the attributes protocol, host, path name, search. Protocol in the previous example will be HTTP, host will be www.iitkgp.ernet.in, path name, if within the host you have specified some subdirectories /doc /index.html, that portion will be in the search path name. And lastly, there is a search option you can specify here. This is if you are using the get method of submitting the URL, you can give a question mark followed by some keywords or some data which will be passed to the web server. So, the search attribute will be containing the data that will be following that question mark, right. Okay. And in the location object, there are two methods which are supported. One is reload. Reload, see, with location you have the URL. If you invoke reload, the page will be again be loaded from the web server. That is, you want to refresh a page sometime. If you invoke reload, the page will be reloaded from the web server. Now, you know that in the browser you have a default reload button. This functionality you can also have directly from a JavaScript method which can be invoked from JavaScript. Or you can have replace. Replace is not reload, rather here you specify some other URL. So, some other URL will be loaded and will be replacing the presently displayed page on the window. Now, if you use replace, then the specified URL will also replace the current one in the browser's history list. It is not that the new page will be considered as a page which was visited after I had visited the previous page. No, even in the history I am replacing the history information by this new information. Replace will do exactly that. Now, the history object you had already seen earlier. History object basically is used to model the browsing history of a window. Now, it actually represents a string which is considered to be an array of recently visited URLs. Now, for security point of view, the elements of the array or the individual URLs are not directly accessible from JavaScript, because if you are allowed to do so, then a JavaScript program as part of a downloaded HTML document can have access to the pages that a user is browsing, which can invade on the secrecy of the particular user. So, normally you are not allowed to look at the individual URLs in the history, but rather what you can see is the length, how many URLs are contained in the history. And some of the properties, there is one property you can have access to, the length, as I said. This will contain the number of URLs stored in history. Regarding methods, the back and forward method you have already seen through examples. You can move forward, you can move backward. See, you can move forward and backward in history without accessing the URL directly. You can display the next page or the previous page on the window. That is what you are allowed to do. And instead of moving back and forward by a single page in terms of history at a time, you can also use the go method, which takes as argument an integer which specifies the number of pages to skip in the history list. Like if you give go within bracket 5, it will be the 5th page in the future. If you give go -3, the 3rd page in the past. So, in this way you can skip arbitrary number of pages to go forward and backward in the history list. Next, let us come to the document object. Now, the document object is also a very important object, just like window, because as I said, the document object indicates the document being displayed on the present window or the frame, and there are a number of attributes and methods you need to associate with this particular object in order to operate or manipulate the document. Let us see. So, this is what I have said. Window document is the HTML document being displayed. This is most commonly used along with window, and it is due to this window document object and the method and attributes available under it. This allows the client side JavaScript scripts help in designing interactive web pages. Since you are able to manipulate the document, it helps you in making the pages interactive in a number of different ways. Let us see some of the properties and methods. Some of the main properties of the document object are a link color, v link color. These are the colors of the hyperlinks. The first one indicates the normal color of an unvisited link which has not yet been clicked. Link color represents the color of a link after it has been clicked and visited, and v-link color, while you are pressing or clicking a link, the color of that link changes temporarily to some other color, that is v-link color. Okay. Second set of properties are anchors. Now, you know, within a document you can provide some anchors and you can have hyperlinks made to those anchors in the same document. By clicking on the hyperlinks, you can go straight away to a certain section of a document. Okay. Now, a document can have 10 anchors defined. They will be available as an array of 10 elements, and this array will be called anchors. So, anchors actually represent an array of anchor objects which are actually character strings representing the defined anchors in the document. Similarly, if you have applets defined in your HTML page, then the applets property will contain the array of all the applet objects that have been defined. BG color, FG color represents the background and foreground color, which you can change as per your need. Cookie, we have already seen that how you can use it. Forms, again, if there are forms in the document, they can be accessed as an array of form objects. Similar is the case for images. If there are several IMG tagged elements representing images in the document, each of them will indicate a particular element of this image array. Okay. So, all these things are available for access in a document dot images object. Last modified, we had seen this example. This represents the last modification date of the document. Link, if there are hyperlinks in the page, again they are available as an array of links. Location or URL, both you can use, they represent the URL from where the document presently being displayed had been loaded. Title is an attribute which represents the text which is stored between the begin title and the end title tags of the document being displayed. Now, some of the methods which are available under document are, see, document means when you have a document being displayed on a screen, we had said earlier that this document is something which is embedded inside a window. Document is basically an HTML file. Okay. So, when we talk about the methods applicable under this, we should be remembering that actually what is being contained in this object is nothing but HTML document. So, the first method available is open, which opens a new HTML document inside the present window. This open is different from an open window. In window open, we are opening a new window, but here the window is the same, you are opening a new HTML document under that, right. Similarly, you can close a document. You can call write or write ln. Write means you just write the string specified in the current location of the document. Write ln means after writing the string you append a new line character automatically. So, in this way, by using write or write ln, whatever you are outputting, that gets appended or merged to the surrounding HTML document. Now, with this we come to the end of our discussion on JavaScript. If you recall again, over the last 3 lectures, we had talked about the basic features of the Java language, including the object oriented features, object oriented paradigm, concepts of objects and properties. Then through examples we have tried to see how we can use these properties to our benefit, how we can utilize these concepts to develop more attractive and interactive web pages. Now, let us see some solutions to the problems of our previous lecture. So, in our lecture number 26, the first question was, what is the purpose of the set timeout method? Here the set timeout, I had said the set timeout method basically is used to schedule a piece of JavaScript code to execute or run at some specified time in the future. Now, here you must specify 2 parameters to this function or method. The first one is which JavaScript method to invoke, and second parameter will indicate how much, after how much delay it is to be invoked, and this delay has to be specified in milliseconds. Second, what are the purposes of the back and forward methods of the history object? This we have explained several number of times. They are basically used to move backward and forward in the history list. This allows you to browse across the pages you have visited in the recent past, or in the future you again come back from there. So, you can move forward and backward in that list. How can you find out the browser type and browser version number? This again we had mentioned using the navigator app name and navigator app version attributes. We can use these. What do the location attribute of the window object signify? Location actually represents the URL of the page that is presently being displayed on the browser, and as we had seen through examples, if we assign some new URL to this location attribute, the page being displayed also gets changed. Okay. So, now some questions from today's lecture. How do you store and retrieve the value of a cookie? This we have seen through examples today. How do you access a Java applet from JavaScript code? Here we have seen that the first part is easier, but the reverse is not so easy and is a non-standard thing. So, Java applet from JavaScript code is fairly straightforward. What do the window and the document objects represent in JavaScript? How do you change the background and foreground colors of a document? So, with this we end today's lecture. In the next lecture we shall be starting our discussion on Java and Java applets. Thank you.
(1951). A young nation aspiring to find ways to fulfill a dream lays the foundation of an institution that will give aspiring technocrats the license to fly high. The first Indian Institute of Technology is born at Kharagpur. Founded on the basis of the recommendations of the N.R. Sarkar Committee that was set up in 1945 to consider the development of higher technical institutions in India, the institute was first established in 5 Esplanade East, Kolkata, before it moved to Kharagpur in 1951. With Sir Gyan Chandra Ghosh as the first director and Dr. B.C. Roy as one of its founding guardians, the institute established itself as the symbol of a young, dynamic and resurgent nation. As top students rubbed shoulders with the most celebrated of professors and scholars, visions took shape, and IIT Kharagpur continued to play the pioneering role that was envisaged for it, enabling India to become a knowledge powerhouse that it is today.